Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. It's my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker this morning, the Honorable Mark Meadows, Republican from North Carolina. A true freedom fighter in the United States Congress, Mark Meadows is serving his fourth term representing North Carolina's 11th District since January of 2013. Meadows ran for Congress after accumulating nearly 30 years of work experience as a small businessman, creating growth and value by specializing in startups and business reorganization. During his time in the House, Meadows has been a known champion for fiscal responsibility, accountable government, pro-growth economic policies, pro-family and pro-life initiatives, and a strong military. Both Democrats and Republicans alike refer to him as a great leader, a listener, and someone who doesn't back down from a fight. As a result, after just a few years in Washington, Meadows has risen to be one of the most influential members of Congress. In November of 2016, he was elected as the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, an influential group founded in January 2015, consisting of roughly 40 conservative members of Congress dedicated to giving a voice to those who feel forgotten by their government. He was reelected as the caucus chairman in January 2019, and he's led the group through numerous high-profile legislative battles, including health care reform and tax reform. And as a result, several commentators have labeled the House Freedom Caucus as, under Meadows' leadership, a group with new clout in Washington. He served 2 consecutive terms as chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Subcommittee on Government Operations, with oversight jurisdiction over federal agencies, including the Executive Office of the President and others. He served 33 terms as a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee with expertise in the Middle East and North Africa, and he's been recognized numerous times for his support of Israel, including leadership of bipartisan change to condemn the United Nations anti-Israel record. Meadows' leadership on Capitol Hill has been recognized by the American Conservative Union, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the National Rifle Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Taxpayer Union, the Military Officers Association of America, the Nature Conservatory, the National Retail Federation, and on and on. Above all, Meadows is a deeply committed Christian and someone who has demonstrated a devotion to his faith even in the highest pressure environments. One of his proudest accomplishments to date was his role in helping secure the release of Miriam Ibrahim, an individual who had been imprisoned by the Sudanese government for simply practicing her Christian faith. He and his wife, Debbie, have 2 adult children, Blake and Haley. Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in welcoming Congressman Mark Meadows?
Keep your seat. God bless you. It is great to be with you. Thank you for that welcome. I normally do not get a welcome like that in Washington, D.C. You know, we're here to tell a little bit of the truth about what is going on. And I'm having to leave right after this to go and do an interview with an ambassador that was relieved of her duty as part of the Adam Schiff impeachment effort. I think it's time that we send Adam Schiff home instead of the President of the United States. What do you think? I think it's time. You know, they love to do these things in secret. They love to actually have this secret way of trying to form a narrative to impeach this president. And the people of America spoke in November of 2016, and they spoke loudly that we need a change, we need to drain the swamp, and President Donald Trump is doing exactly that. He is doing that. Now, I've had the opportunity to be the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. Now, the Freedom Caucus, for some of you that don't know, we actually started a small group of us that said we needed to get together, and it had a few patriots. Patriots like Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio. And I'm here today to let you know I am looking for his jacket. I know it is here somewhere. Jim is my best friend in Congress. There is not a man who is willing to speak the truth in the face of adversity more than Jim Jordan. And if you're from Ohio, you're blessed to have him as a member of Congress. But the Freedom Caucus was designed to give a voice to millions of Americans who thought that Washington, D.C. had forgotten them. Now, I know that all of you who have been actively engaged and have truly sometimes put your life on hold. And by the way, these teleprompters, they have nothing on them, so I just want to let you know this is not a Barack Obama speech, all right? So, so if we, when you start to look at America and the fact that Washington, D.C., has lost its way. It is time that we restore that. We need to have some kind of vaccination for the Potomac fever. It's amazing when members of Congress and senators, they get elected, you go out, you work hard, you try to make sure that they're going to make a difference. They get elected, they raise their right hand, they say they're going to defend the Constitution, they're going to support your values. They come across the Potomac River and they lose their mind. All of a sudden I've said it here before, I might as well say it again. They have the backbone of a banana. When you peel it back, it gets real mushy. It is time that we elect people that have a backbone of steel and that are willing to stand up for the values that our God holds dear. Now, they're trying to do all of this in secret just a few miles from here this morning. In fact, they issued a subpoena just a few minutes ago to compel the witness to come forward and actually testify. But they're not seeking truth. They're seeking a narrative. They're seeking a narrative that they've already written the final conclusion to, because they started 3 years ago. Even before this president was sworn in, they were talking about impeachment, and they're bound and determined to do it. And we need to send a clear message. If they do it, we will send them home. We need to send that. Now, we are not taking this sitting down or even lying down. We're going to stay in the fight because of people like you that continue to encourage us to stay in the fight. And I can tell you, being a member of Congress was never on my bucket list. In fact, I can remember the time that I felt like I was being called to actually run for Congress, and because it wasn't on my bucket list, I actually had a wonderful life in the mountains of western North Carolina. I called my wife that particular day and I said, honey, I feel like the Lord is leading me to run for Congress. And she said, well, honey, if that's the way you are being led, I'll support you in that. And then all of a sudden, this sick feeling came over me. Because I didn't like to get up in front of people. I didn't like to be in the limelight. I just like to have a private life that actually really didn't involve coming and speaking before hundreds and thousands of people. So I got really this ill feeling, so ill that I had to pull over the car on the side of the road and throw up. But sometimes you're called to do something that brings you out of your comfort zone, and many of you are here today because you're out of your comfort zone because you love this country and you believe it is worth fighting for. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. So you may have heard about a little resolution that's floating around. The new chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Andy Biggs, who has taken over on October 1st, has hit the ground running. He put forth a resolution that said we need to censure Adam Schiff for making up his opening testimony, and it is time that we hold him accountable. It's time that we hold him accountable. Now, there are 104 members that have signed on to that resolution. It's growing each and every day, and if your member hasn't signed on, you need to call them and make them see the light. And if they don't see the light, you need to make them feel the heat. And if you will do that, I can tell you that those backbones that are like bananas start to stiffen up when they hear from hundreds, if not thousands, of people from back home. Because there's only one thing that a member of Congress fears. It's being voted out of office. And there's only one group of people who can do that, and that is you, we the people, and we need to make sure that we hold our elected officials accountable. It is time, isn't it? It is time. So that resolution is being put forth, and I can tell you that right now, when Adam Schiff starts to make up things, and this is being covered, and so I'm sure it's being tweeted out right now. So let me just double down. When Adam Schiff makes up things, it's time to call him out for making up things and actually make sure he's held accountable. It is time that we hold him accountable. Now, I was in a transcribed interview the other day. We had Ambassador Volker there, and they brought him in, and actually the Democrats wanted to change the rules. They said, well, what we want to make sure of is that we have an unfair advantage. We want to make sure that well, that's not changing the rules, is it? But they wanted to make sure that the Democrat staff, the majority of staff in the House, actually had more people in the room to be able to question the witness, and that the Republican staff, they didn't want the members of Congress to ask questions, so they said no member of Congress can ask questions. Now, the last time I checked, most of the people of the 435 in the House and the 100 in the Senate, they're the only ones in Washington, D.C. that were actually elected to represent the people. And yet somehow the Democrats felt like it was best to silence people like Jim Jordan, Devin Nunes, and people who actually know this subject. And so Adam Schiff was saying, we don't want members to ask questions. Well, I can tell you that particular transcribed interview was going so poorly for the Democrats. After the third hour, Adam Schiff says, well, I'm going to break my own rule, and I'm going to ask 25 minutes of questions. Now, you don't hear any of that reported in the media. Why? Because they leak out the text messages to give a particular narrative that was not supported by the actual interview that we conducted for over 10 hours. If they're about transparency, let's be transparent. Let's let the American people decide for themselves. What do you think? I'm also here to tell you that this president is the most pro-life president we've ever had in the history of our country, bar none. Bar none. He's willing to fight. And when a certain governor from Virginia talked about that you need to make someone comfortable before you murder them after they've been born, this president saw that not only as offensive, but morally wrong, and called it out for what it is, and that is murder. He is willing to stand with us on that issue. But I can also tell you that this president is serious about keeping his campaign promises. You know, early on in the administration, I tell the story, and I won't go through all the details today, but I was actually there in the Oval Office. I got to go to the Oval Office. I know it comes as a shock to many of you. I was never invited there under the previous administration. But as I went there was a huge whiteboard in this side room, just off the Oval Office. And on that whiteboard was every single campaign promise that he had made, when he had made it, and they were going down, checking them off one by one, because this is a promise-keeping president. He also works harder than anybody I've ever met. I mean, he'll work all through the night. I mean, there are phone calls that he makes in the middle of the night. He will oftentimes go on 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Now, we saw that last night. He was in Minneapolis. Well, there's one conservative there's 3 conservatives from Minneapolis. But you know what we had last night was an arena full of conservatives who said that they want their government back as well when they were there. And it was electrifying. Now, we're talking about Minnesota. We're not talking about Alabama. And yet, the same yearning for we the people to take control of what we do is alive in Minnesota, in Maine, in California, in New York, and in between, and everywhere else. And if we allow that flame, that little flicker, to start to grow into a huge blaze, not only will we win in 2020, but we will win with landslide proportions in spite of what the mainstream media and the polls will say today. And I think it's time that we put a little fodder on the fire. It is time. So I just need to give you a little bit of the background. You know, they've got these 3 nice monitors right here in front of me, and they have this big clock. I mean, it is probably, the clock has numbers that are maybe a foot tall. And that's good because I wear glasses. And most members of Congress, when it hits 0, they give you their 10-point closing plan right about then. And I am not going to do that today, but I do want to share really from my heart and ask you for 2 things. One, a lot of people think that our nation will be healed by the policy that happens just a few miles from here. And I'm here to tell you that our nation will be healed with committed believers and people on their knees before their Heavenly Father, praying for our land each and every day. And if you will pray, He will be faithful. And so I would ask you to pray for our nation. The second thing I would ask you to do is to pray and encourage this president. Pray for him and encourage him, because I can tell you the attacks that he's under, I don't know how any person has ever been able to stand up to such attacks. I get concerned at times because the attacks are unrelenting. You would think that they would even, have a day or 2 break, and they just keep coming. And yet, I can tell you that even the schemes of the Democrats right now are not having an effect on this president or this country, because ultimately, he has one priority, and that is to put the will of the people, your priorities, first, unlike anybody else that I've ever seen. He truly has. He is. He's willing to do things that only other presidents have talked about, and we know that. We can look no further than in Jerusalem. There is now an embassy where there was only a promise before. He made a commitment. He was consistent with that commitment, and he delivered on that commitment. And so it is with that same type of resolve that you're going to see this president run through the finished tape in November of 2020, when we have 4 more years to actually turn this country back to its rightful owner, which is we the people. This president and the First Lady are willing to sacrifice so much so that we can truly live in one nation under God. I want to share this personal story in all humility. I'm a nobody from nowhere. I really am. I mean, if you were trying to figure out if this guy was ever going to be a member of Congress, the betting odds were not good. Not that you should be betting. And yet, Debbie and I had the opportunity to attend a state dinner in honor of the Australian Prime Minister here just a few weeks ago. And we went, and as anybody who has ever been honored to go to a state dinner, you feel privileged just to be invited. And and I looked around and I kept saying, "Well, honey, what are you and I doing here?" And I share that not to share the fact that we were there, but to share the fact that the First Lady and the President made a decision. It was unbelievable. We had military bands from all branches of the service, violins, but they made a determination to sing and play the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Now, if you know the Battle Hymn of the Republic, it's one of those that just brings just that sense of patriotism and pride and sometimes a few tears. And they could have left out a verse. And one of those verses really talked about Christ being born across the seas. And yet they made the decision to make a strong statement, not just to the visitors that were there, not just to the diplomats that were there, but really to the nation at large. That indeed that we are a nation that is endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights that are God-given. And to recognize that and to see that brought tears to my eyes. It was one of those times when, as we were finishing up with that Battle Hymn of the Republic, and Him dying for us, and some of our sons and daughters dying for freedom, there is a calling on each one of us. And I share that because this President and First Lady, against all odds, are willing to stand in the gap, to stand shoulder to shoulder with each one of you and believe that we are a country that once again can be God-fearing and God-honoring. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you for allowing me to come and be a part of the team. God bless you. Thank you. We love you. We love you.